Each week, nearly a dozen movies are released theatrically. 40 films a month, more than 400 a year. That's a plethora of cinema. Too much cinema. You'd have to be an addict to see all that, but don't fret. We've got you covered. This is CinemAddicts.
Hey everyone, what's up? It's a new week of CinemAddicts. This is CinemAddicts episode 278. Eric Holmes, do I sound okay right now? I'm like Anderson. Maybe I'm... Okay, I sound great. Okay, great.
You sound excited. You sound jovial. You sound glad to be here, Greg.
No. This is me being fake Greg. Fake Greg, we're kind of mixture with real Greg, and I wish I was more real like Eric Holmes and Bruce Purkey, my betters. Well, we'll talk about that later in the episode. Right now, we are covering movies that are being released during the week of Friday, January 24th, 2025. The movies are The Colors Within, Rose, Brave the Dark, Inheritance, and Presence. Eric, out of all of these movies, is there anyone that you really want to see that you haven't seen already?
That I haven't seen already?
Yeah, out of any of the movies we're covering.
Presence. I was liking Brave the Dark, and because I was thinking Hold the Dark, and then I was like, yeah, it's one of those faith-based movies, so I'm good there.
You don't have any faith in humanity? Faith-based? Aren't you faith-based, as in based in faith?
It's like
God? Faith in yourself?
It's like watching a documentary that's cooked. It's like, it's propaganda. We get enough of that on Twitter and Facebook. We don't need that in movies.
All right, fair
It's
enough.
enjoying a little
okay.
Enjoying a little snack today. How you doing?
Okay, so the nice people, very good. In fact, Eric Holmes has been really good this week because he was able to Magic Mind gummy bears. Me and Eric Holmes were able, the kind people over at Magic Mind were able to actually give us some gummy bears. Eric Holmes, your honest review of the gummy bears. We are not medical professionals, but I'm sure you take caffeine on a daily basis, or we need to be pumped up. Has Magic Mind in the past, or maybe even the gummies, do they help at all, or do they taste well? How do they affect your day-to-day existence? Is it just good to eat?
I like the taste of them. They taste like the natural fruit roll-ups.
Yes,
about, like
when we grew up on. Yes,
the candy fruit roll-ups, but then you have the ones with like the pits and stuff in it, and it tastes like it's got that kind of flavor to it, like that apple flavor. Well, yeah, it says
apple right
there. So
yeah, are you a green apple guy? Maybe would you grow up a green apple guy?
I just like them because they taste like kind of my kind of candies. They don't taste loaded down with sugar. They just taste good. But as far as like the Magic Mind, the mind portion of that, I think it does, but it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell if it's that or if it's me doing the placebo. Like I don't know how all that works. I just know that when I take it, as I just took some, get amped up and ready to talk movies.
That's all you need. That's a very good endorsement. Again, me and Eric, we're not medical practitioners or health gurus. Actually, Eric says he's not all about the sugar, all the sugar kind of candy, which unfortunately I am, meaning Eric Holmes will live a much longer life than me. So he's actually healthier than me ultimately. Yeah.
Just so you know, I'm the kind of guy that eats regular Cheerios over any other type of Cheerios.
Healthier, smarter.
Not healthier. I just don't like the
sugar.
Not a big sugar guy. I like the normal flavors, I guess.
I love sugar. I love sugar. So me and the grave have a really closer meeting than you and Bruce Purkey. So ultimately when I die, are you taking over? Are you going to take over your half from Bruce Purkey? Are you going to take over the CinemAddicts? Because he's still up in the attic. What are you going to do? Are you going to treat him? Are you going to take him down from the attic? Is it going to be a 50% after I'm dead? Or are you just going to take the whole corporation over? Maybe pull in Anderson into the mix. Or are you just going to take all the monies?
Well, Bruce kind of has a key at this point, so he can just come and go as he pleases. Bigger like, dude, if we're going to sneak out, just here.
Okay. All right. So I'm telling you, listeners, okay, I do love movies. I do love my sugar. I do have a little bit of a headache sometimes because I eat too much sugar. One thing that the Magic Mind does, actually, to Eric's point, it helps replace the sugar fix, and also the caffeine fix. It gets me amped up. So thank you, Magic Mind, for supplying me and Eric Holmes over at CinemAddicts with some Magic Mind gummies. Do they call them gummies, Eric Holmes, or do they call them gummy bears? What's the nomenclature? What's the way? How do they say it?
Magic Mind mental performance gummies. Clear focus, calm mind, less stress.
Okay.
for kids and adults.
Oh,
Caffeine
okay.
free, ages 8 and up.
Oh, ages 8 and up. How about for people who live in the attic? Is it okay? Bruce Purkey, I get to start throwing gummies over here.
Yeah, I'll probably leave some out, sprinkle
Okay.
some in as people
So,
food.
again, Eric and I have really we go back and forth. We Bruce Purkey will be coming up with reviews from the Cinem-Attic in about 35 to 40 minutes. He has a lot of astute reviews of The Colors Within, Rose, Brave the Dark, and Inheritance. So some really good. If you want some of the serious cinematic stuff, you have to go up in the attic, listen to Bruce Purkey, and then maybe by then, who knows, maybe he'll have some gummy bears, mental enhancement stuff from Magic Mind to help him along the way. But check out his reviews at the latter part of this episode. Eric Holmes, before we get to the features, what's been going on the last week? Have you still been doing triple shift, double shifts, quadruple shifts? Are you pretty much working to the gills? Do you have no life? Have you been writing screenplays? What have you been doing?
Yeah, I've been doing all that. Been kind of burning out, but thanks to
Burning out.
Magic Mind,
Oh,
it's making all that a lot easier to get through.
Very good.
No, yeah, it's been normal. Go to work, come home, write, do stuff. Yeah, busy all the time, but actually, no joke. The Magic Minds kind of helped. That came in the mail like I'd say
A couple of days ago, right?
4 days ago, something like that.
Yes.
I've been taking like 3 of them a day, and it's been making the days a lot easier.
Wow.
Well, whether it's the Magic Mind or the placebo, I don't know, but I can tell you that I take it and my days go by like that.
Well,
almost too quick though. Almost too quick.
Very good. Well, you can trust Eric Holmes. You can trust Bruce Purkey. Greg Srisavasdi, on the other hand, me speaking in the third person, I sound like a glad ender. So it's good that it's coming from Eric Holmes, who is the more truthful voice of CinemAddicts, along with Bruce Purkey over at the Cinem-Attic right now, over in the attic, trying to drum up some reviews for our show. Before we get to our one final thing, for our Patreon, we're doing The Goonies, we're doing Commando. Eric Holmes, I feel like absolving you and saying you don't even have to watch these movies again because you've seen each of them hundreds of times. Do you even have to rewatch these movies for next week? When you and Bruce do the Patreon, I know it's your job, our job, but can you sort of not even watch them because you've seen them too many times?
I mean, I probably will anyway.
Yeah,
just an excuse to watch them again. It's been. I've seen Goonies relatively recently. It's been a while since I've seen Commando, but I mean, I've seen both movies so many times.
So many times. Well, the good news is I've never seen either of them. So as many films I've seen in my life, I'm excited. Yes,
I'm real excited to hear what you think of them. Especially Goonies, because I think like Goonies are like certain people love that grew up on it, but I don't think it catches people outside of that. So I'm real curious to see what you think of the movie.
Okay, I'm very excited to see. I grew up in the 80s, so it's one of the many things I missed loving in the and experiencing in the 80s. Now, in my early 50s, I get to experience The Goonies and Commando. Thank you to Angie Clark, our CinemAddicts Patreon member, and most importantly, our friend, very close friend, for the recommendation of The Goonies, and Commando goes to our Patreon member, Ryan Smith. So if you want to, yes, sir.
Greg, when you watch The Goonies, are you going to go Commando?
Okay, I'm going Commando right now, folks. You only see the top of the screen. I'm going family show. Family show. Wah, wah, dad joke, family show. Now, thank you, Patreon members. $5 catch all. You get you get a bonus episode where me, Bruce, and Eric spotlight a year taken from 1940 to 2020. By the way, Eric Holmes, I actually wrote down the dates that we covered. Okay. So by the time you and I are doing the Patreon, and me and Bruce, when we do the randomizer, I can actually find out which years we've already covered. So we are deep.
You have them in front of you?
I have them in my office. So it's good. But I'll make sure that I'll have them in front of me when we do our Patreon bonus episode next week at the end of January. Again, we're spotlighting the year 1985. You get $5 catch-all bonus episode for our Patreon members. That's the way pretty much me, Eric, and Bruce get our enough money to buy a cup of coffee once a week. So thank you, Patreon members, for supporting us.
I don't know what you're talking about. This coffee. You got Magic Mind. Don't drink the coffee.
There you go.
Although coffee does taste good, so I'll still drink coffee anyway.
You're a great pitcher, man. And also, you guys get spoilers pretty much early on an opening weekend, and then we release those spoilers. Patreon members get our spoilers immediately. And then if you are a listener who is a non-Patreon member, the public, you will receive our spoilers, our weekly movie spoilers, maybe a couple of weeks after that movie is released. And should I say anything else as far as plugging, Eric, or am I good? Should we go?
Yeah,
Off the top?
Yeah.
You good?
Should go. I'm trying to go through my head, see if I'm forgetting anything, but I don't think I am because I just took some Magic Mind earlier.
You're doing great.
You're pretty sharp.
Magic Mind loves you. Magic Mind, listen to Eric Holmes. He's the pitch man for you guys right now. He honestly loves your stuff. So do I. And yeah, it keeps us alert, keeps us alive, but does not keep us overworked. Eric Holmes, I'll be honest, is really overworked. I'm overworked. Bruce Purkey, he's overworked too. And so are you, dear listener. So hopefully with all this overwork and too much labor intensive lives that we all lead, we can actually escape from reality. I don't know if that's the best way to say it. We can escape from reality by watching a whole bunch of movies. One of those movies is Presence. Presence is directed, not written. David Koepp wrote Presence. David Koepp is known for such screenplays as Jurassic Park. I'm thinking what else? Snake Eyes. He's done a lot of different movies. I think he did the Indiana Jones. Did he do the last Indiana Jones movie? He's one of the most prolific writers.
Didn't he write Jurassic Park?
Yes, he did write Jurassic Park. He's had
he's like one of those I'm pretty sure he's also like one of those writers that's on like
the Mount Rushmore.
Like you get the big Hollywood movie that came out, and he's like one of the 15 writers on there.
Right.
He's like, yeah, he's definitely a go-to. He's been what do you call it? The Angels and Demons and the
yeah Angels and Demons. I mean, he's worked with Premium Rush.
Spider-Man. He wrote Spider-Man.
Yeah, and he's also a director, and he directed Premium Rush. I interviewed him for Premium Rush years ago. That movie.
Room, Mission Impossible.
Right. I think, did he do Stir of Echoes? I don't know. Maybe, possibly.
Yeah.
Okay, Stir of Echoes. Good movie, Eric Holmes. I've never seen it.
Did he direct
Stir of
that?
Echoes? He might have directed a good movie, Eric Holmes.
Stir of Echoes.
I could be wrong.
Window.
Oh, okay. Oh.
And he directed Premium Rush as well.
Okay, listeners. Secret Window, Johnny Depp, Corn on the Cob, Stephen King, Maria Bello, Timothy Hutton. I've seen that movie 7 or 8 times. I love that movie. Eric Holmes, Secret Window, Flash Round, underrated film?
It's been a long time since I've seen it. Because I got that when it came out on DVD, and that was the first and last time I've seen it. I remember liking it, but I haven't seen it more.
You got it on DVD. That's why you liked it, so you purchased it on DVD, correct? Am I assuming that, or
no? I bought it on DVD, and
because
that was
you loved
the first.
It. Oh, that was the first time you saw it.
That was the first and the last time I've seen it.
Oh, you bought it on DVD on a whim. You just said, okay, well, it has some.
It was like I haven't watched this one, so I'll buy it and I'll watch it, and then I watched it, and I just never went back and watched it. I remember liking it, but I've only seen it the one time.
Okay, we're done with the episode. You can listen to Cinem-Attic, because my main question for this episode is Secret Window, starring Johnny Depp, directed and written by David Koepp, an underrated film? We need to know. And part B of that question is, where the heck, we can't say HE double toothpicks because we're a family show, where the heck is Eric Holmes' DVD of Secret Window? Right? Could be lost somewhere. I don't know where. I used to have a DVD myself, actually a Blu-ray. Don't know where it is. Maybe I traded it in like an idiot. Anyways, love Secret Window. But Presence, written by David Koepp, directed by Steven Soderbergh. Here is a plot line for Presence. Quote, a family moves into a suburban house and becomes convinced they're not alone. The ensemble cast includes Lucy Liu, Chris Sullivan. A lot of you might know Chris Sullivan for his years of work on that NBC series This Is Us. Also stars Kalina Liang, Wes Mulholland, Eddie Madej, and Julia Fox. Eric Holmes, your thoughts on Steven Soderbergh as a filmmaker? A lot of times he will direct, shoot, and also edit his own movies. Do we give extra points for extra credit for pretty much doing 3 jobs all in one? What do you think of him as a filmmaker overall in his movies? Big, broad stroke.
I like some of them I see, other ones not, that high on. Kimmy was good. I think that was the last one of his I seen. And Logan Lucky, that one was good. Haywire was good. Yeah, and actually now that I think about it, maybe I do like him a lot more than I think. The Ocean's movies are kind of they're fun to watch once.
Right. Right.
But
But
then
Logan Lucky to me was Logan Lucky to me was an elevated Ocean's 11 because it's a little bit more scrappy and just fun. I appreciated that more than the Ocean's films, even though Oceans were much more expensive, had higher star power. But I really like Logan Lucky. So
yeah, his movies, I guess. Yeah, looking at them now, Solaris. We talked about that. Just as boring as the original, so I guess it was good. Yeah, I like his movies for the most part, but he's got like so many of them. Let's see, in 2003, one, two. Yeah, he's does a lot of movies, so I don't watch all of them.
yeah.
Probably because like 14 of them come out a day.
So very quickly before this is sort of a left turn on this. I have my idea for the Junketeer episode number 3. People who are Patreon members can actually get my podcast called The Junketeer, which I focus on movies I covered back in the day. Thanks to Eric Holmes. He gave me the immediate idea for episode number 3. He mentioned Solaris, and I will give you guys, Patreon members, a special episode for The Junketeer, only available for our Patreon members. My experience is going to the Solaris press screening, and it's not a family show when I talk about what happened actually at the screening. So it should be fun. Thank you, Eric Holmes, for that suggestion. If you want some Solaris information, check out the Junketeer for on only living in our Patreon and Apple Podcast subscriptions community. Now, Presents, Eric Holmes, you decided to maybe this weekend, if you have time, you might spend money to see Presents. Why are you going to spend your hard-earned money to maybe give this one a shot if you do go see it?
Well, that I don't know. I have a feeling you're going to tell me.
I'm not telling you anything. I'm just suggesting. But is there something that might attract you to this movie? Are you thinking of seeing it? If you have the time, would you check it out from what you've seen?
Right now, because I didn't get a screener for this, so the only thing I know about it is the poster.
It's a ghost story.
It looked like a family in front of a house, and the colors were inverted. So like black's white, white's black, that sort of thing.
That's right. And it's a ghost story. And are you a fan of ghost stories? If I recall, Eric Holmes, you're not a huge fan, whether you believe or not in ghosts, because I know you don't believe in ghosts, but you don't like the ghost films as a genre, or am I mistaken?
I like the one with Casey Affleck. That one's really good.
Ghost story is good, yeah. Okay,
I think you can make good ghost stories. They don't usually scare me, but like if they play with the idea, then I can usually get behind it.
Okay, so I apologize for this long preamble. Presence. When you look at the trailer, it's essentially, it looks like a ghost story from the POV. You mentioned a ghost story. Okay, that's a very memorable film. But for Presence, almost a similar situation, kind of, where you actually are looking into the lives of this family who purchased this new home. It's presumably haunted. It's a haunted house, very spacious and beautiful house. And for the entire narrative, you see the ghost presence as he or she or it or whatever affects the certain lives of the members of this family. Interesting enough, but it takes from the actual camera, so the camera itself is the ghost. So you see everything in this movie pretty much from a POV style. Is that arresting to you, POV style type of storytelling, Eric?
Yeah, so it's like it's kind of like Into the Void, the Gaspar Noé movie. Like the guy dies and is so this guy dies, and then the whole movie is just the camera's point of view, just kind of floating everywhere because he's dead now.
Right, and I remember portions of Irreversible sort of like that as well. But yeah, that kind of aesthetic permeates throughout Presence. And I'm a slightly bigger fan of Steven Soderbergh than Eric Holmes. I really love his films. I also love the cerebral approach to a ton of his work. And Presence, here's the big disclaimer. If you're looking for a scary ghost movie, supernatural, paranormal thing, Friday night or Saturday night out to go with a date or loved one or a fellow cinephile, a fellow cinematic, looking to be scared, you will be disappointed. You will be disappointed because it is, in my opinion. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay, you're in. Okay. Yeah, contrarian. Yeah, very good, Eric Holmes. But you will be disappointed because for me, it wasn't completely scary. There are scary moments, but ultimately, the ultimate draw, the big draw for Presence is the fact that it's a very moving, resonant, and immersive look at this family that is gradually coming apart at the seams. Kalina Liang, who is the daughter in the family, she gives the most showiest or just the most notable and really good performance. Her performance is pretty much front and center for Presence. Also, Lucy Liu and Chris Sullivan and Eddie Madej, they're the other members of the family, and they all do a good job. If you are looking for an intense, immersive, resonant family drama with some really cool cinematic technique, you're going to enjoy Presence. But please do not go in looking to be scared, looking for a bunch of not even jump scares. There's not a, I know some people are not fans of jump scares, but there's not a ton of jump scares. There's not a ton of horrible, scary moments. And you just take that out of your mind. Look at Presence as, in my opinion, a family drama with some paranormal, supernatural elements. And then possibly you might really have a good time at the movie theaters. That's the only way you're going to be able to see Presence, because it's in theaters Friday, January 24th. My rating for Presence, yes, here it comes.
Oh, I was going to say everything you said is what's selling me on it. Just because, like, the thing, like, I don't go to, as I mentioned, I don't go into ghost movies to be scared because they just don't scare me at all.
Yeah.
Hey, touch me, ghost. Oh, you can't. You're intangible. But the idea of using a ghost story to tell a different kind of story, that's kind of what I would be going for anyway. So
that's it. It's using that construct to tell really a family story. And I think I don't want to give too much away. I will talk about spoilers for our Cinematics universe this week, and I'll release it to our Patreon members. My thoughts on the ending of this movie, which I thought was slightly scary and memorable and very haunting. So I know I'm kind of contradicting myself, but I will explain what the scariest parts of Presence are in my spoiler discussion of Presence. But right now, the review for Presence, I'm giving it, Eric Holmes, what am I giving Presence in theaters January 24th?
We went through this last week. 3.5.
I'm giving Presence 4 stars. I really enjoyed this movie. 4 stars for Presence. Okay, yeah. Eric Holmes, I know you don't have time to really go out the last several weeks. You've been working basically 2 jobs, 60 to 70 hours a week. So if you have the time, would love to hear what you think of that movie if you get to see it on a matinee or one of these evenings on Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, I'll be going up for sure. I was able to get out this week to watch one, so I think I'll be able to get out, or last week to watch one, so I think I'll be able to get out this week to watch that. He sold me on it.
Okay. Next up, I don't know if I'm ever going to sell you on this movie. This is a movie distributed by Angel Studios. They are a faith-based studio. Okay, so they do a lot of faith-based movies.
Propaganda.
Sometimes, I'm sorry, Eric Holmes?
Oh, propaganda, you mean?
But propaganda, I mean, yeah, I believe in propaganda because the propaganda starts with prop, trying to prop you up, trying to prop the human spirit up. So I mean, I am optimistic.
Speaking of ghost stories, have you read the Bible lately?
Oh boy, I better actually get a rim shot so we can actually have a laugh about it. So, anyways, very funny, Eric Holmes. Now, Brave the Dark. I am okay with faith-based movies in general if they have cast a wide net, meaning if they have a universal theme to it, or it's inspiring. And Eric Holmes, I'm not going to argue back and forth with you about propaganda, but sometimes to me, a lot of cinema is propaganda, but I guess it's what kind of propaganda we decide to subscribe to. In your defense, yes, faith-based movies might be not the thing for a lot of people, but there are a lot of people who are really into faith-based movies. I'm not one of those people. I'm more of middle of the road. As long as the movie tells a good story, good news. Brave the Dark, it's based on actual events. It centers on a teacher named Mr. Dean, high school teacher, and he sees one of his students, Nathan. Nathan, played by Nicholas Hamilton. Nathan's a talented runner, athlete in high school, and the problem is Nathan, he is having a lot of problems with his past. There's something that happened regarding his mother and father that continues to haunt him to this day. Eric Holmes would really dislike Brave the Dark because it has a ton of flashbacks that actually are piece by piece throughout the narrative. I don't know, Eric, is that fair? Sometimes you don't like a lot of flashbacks, or you want to make the flashbacks make sense when you're watching a movie?
I
sometimes.
I don't mind. I don't mind flashbacks. What as far as like the only time jump that really bugs me is the hey, we'll do we'll open the movie with the end,
Okay,
and
and then
then
back.
and then just to get you into the movie, and then we'll flash back to the beginning of the movie where they're waking up, taking a shower, making breakfast, talking to like basically they did that flashback because they don't have a beginning of the movie because the
Mm.
beginning of the movie is boring as hell.
Oh, fair, fair.
That's the flashback I hate. If you do it throughout the movie and that's a conceit of it, then that's fine with me.
Well, that is the conceit of Brave the Dark. You get little puzzle pieces told in flashback on why Nathan is still scarred by his experience with his mother and father. You get to know everything what happens by the end of the film. That's not a spoiler. It's just the way predictably a lot of these flashbacks go, especially in family drama driven films. So Nathan's in trouble. He's scarred from his past and he's been living out of his car. One night he decides to, with a couple of buddies, steal some stuff from I believe a store, and it's not a good thing because it lands him in jail. And the only person who's actually seemingly on his side is his teacher, the aforementioned Mr. Dean, played by Jared Harris. And the rest of Brave the Dark deals with how Mr. Dean is trying to pull Nathan in to the world of trying to do. He wants Nathan to be on the straight and what is it called, Eric? Straight and narrow path. Straight and narrow path. Not do bad things. He's trying to bond with Nathan and say, hey, you need to graduate from high school. If you don't, you're a senior already. If you do any other transgression, you'll be completely thrown in jail again and you won't be able to graduate. So that's Brave the Dark. I think Brave the Dark, it means also, it's a pretty obvious title. It means facing your past, braving the darkness of your life in the past and facing the present. And it's a really good family drama, which is, it's highlighted by, my opinion, some really good performances by Jared Harris. You really believe it's Mr. Dean, that high school teacher who just means well. He's very empathetic, very kind, and he's trying to and struggling to understand Nathan, who is a virtual troublemaker, and their relationship forms the heart of Brave the Dark. And I really loved watching their sequences together, them trying to understand each other. And I think the performances of Jared Harris and Nicholas Hamilton are the reasons to see Brave the Dark. It's also a very inspiring story. And yeah, is it propaganda? Possibly. I mean, it depends on apples and oranges, tomato, Caribbean. It depends on how you look at movies, I guess, in big strokes. And look, is it faith-based? Yes, but it's not slathered throughout the narrative. Okay. You might see a shot of the cross. What? Yeah.
What's the faith in this one? Because I remember did Ordinary Angels with Hilary Swank.
Yeah.
And
when they're praying and they're doing the flight thing, right?
They're basically asking God for help to help a problem that God caused. So it's kind of like that doesn't quite make sense, but you know that's how these things. What's like the faith-based part of this?
Great question. I don't see it. I mean, I see there's moments where you get maybe a shot of the cross in a car, but there's no scenes where Mr. Dean is praying or Nathan is praying in a chapel or anything like that. It's not overt, which I think is very good for Brave the Dark. I have not listened to Bruce Purkey's review for Brave the Dark. I hope he sort of liked the movie because I think the faith-based stuff is having faith in other people. And I think Angel Studios said, hey, this is a very good story. Let's put our money behind this movie. And yeah, I didn't really see any God-driven stuff in this movie. It was just a nice teacher trying to do well by this troubled youth. And it's, will they make it or not? I said it's an inspiring story, so I'm not spoiling. I think a lot of people will know what's going to happen at the end of the movie. But I think the way this movie is executed, it's really well done. Jared Harris, Eric, I know you probably don't know the name, but if you saw his face, you've seen.
I know who Jared Harris is. Yeah.
Right.
He was the main guy in Chernobyl,
which I did not see. So that's a good. Okay. You like Chernobyl?
You should. Chernobyl's pretty great.
Okay, you don't watch a lot of that stuff. You don't watch a lot of miniseries.
It's a 3-part series. It goes down. It's like watching a 3-hour movie, like The Brutalist.
I like the brutal. Did you see the Brutalist? Did you like that?
It's not playing here, so
Oh, it's
I've
not
not
playing.
seen
Oh,
it.
okay.
It's a 2024 movie that'll probably be released here in March, I'm sure.
Oh no! All right.
But
So
also directed by Damien Harris. I guess that's his
yes.
brother.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, Damien Harris. I was thinking about that. So you looked it up. They're brothers. Very cool. I think Damien Harris did a movie years ago that I've wanted to watch for years called, I think, The Rachel Papers. But if you look at the filmography of Damien Harris, he has a very interesting filmography. He does a great job with Brave the Dark. And Angel Studios or not, this is a solid drama. I'm giving Brave the Dark based on the acting performances, on the inspiring story. I'm a sucker for these inspiring stories. If they are told correctly and have great performances and well done story, 3.5 stars. 3.5 stars for Brave the Dark for me. Am I this year? I think I'm 3.5 star Greg instead of 4 star Greg, but I don't know what's come over me. 3.5 stars
You're
for
moving down in the world. It's fine.
look, you don't have Eric. You don't have to tell me that. I already know that. So it's just it goes that we should actually start cinematics. Greg Srisavasdi is moving down in the world, and here's cinematics. Brave the Dark is in theaters January 24th. We'd love to hear what you guys think of this movie. Well, I don't know what Bruce Purkey. I don't know what he's thinking of this movie. He'll probably. I'm thinking maybe give it a bad review, but again, apples and oranges, two different opinions. Most importantly, the opinion that really matters are you guys. Would love to hear your thoughts on Brave the Dark. Now, Eric Holmes, we're off to a movie that you and I have seen together. Not together, but we've seen in different times during
Holding
the week.
hands as we're
Holding
watching
hands.
it.
Well, the reason why I'm saying together, because it almost seems like together, because Inheritance is a movie that's shot on the iPhone. When you hear something like that, shot on the iPhone, Eric Holmes, are you excited to hear or watch the movie? Or is it so passe now that when they say a movie shot on the iPhone that you don't even blink an eye?
It's the latter. I don't blink an eye. Just because
It doesn't impress you. It doesn't impress you anymore, that kind of stuff.
no, because the technology is so good that like you can. I mean that's the cool thing about technology. It makes it easier to do things. You know, the consumer grade camera is the difference between a consumer grade camera and a professional grade camera is, you know, that line is getting thinner and thinner every day.
That is fair. That is fair. So with Inheritance, centers on this woman named Maya, played by Phoebe Dynevor. And Phoebe Dynevor was in a movie maybe a year or 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, called Fair Play. Currently on Netflix. I know it got a lot of buzz and acclaim when it came out. I don't think Eric Holmes has seen Netflix, neither has Bruce. I haven't seen Fair Play. Now I want to see Fair Play after watching Phoebe Dynevor in this movie directed by Neil Berger. I don't know, Eric Holmes, if you've seen a bunch of Neil Berger's movies. I think he directed a movie called Limitless. He directs Inheritance, and he's a co-writer on Inheritance, which is co-written by Berger and Olin Senhauer. And the movie centers, again, like I said, on Maya, played by Phoebe Dynevor. Her mother passes away. She's been caretaking her mother for quite a while. And when her mother passes away, at the funeral, her father, who she nor her sister has seen in quite a while, her father, Sam, played by Reese Fons, he comes and he actually says hi to her, and he wants to bond back again with his estranged daughter, Maya. And they have lunch or dinner. I forget which type of service they had. Was it dinner or lunch? I think possibly dinner.
I think it was dinner.
Dinner.
It was nighttime.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Yeah, and he persuades her to come with him and join him on his business venture. She's supposed to entertain some clients because he has this new business venture going. And at first, she's reluctant because they're estranged and she hasn't seen him for so long. But he gives her, I think, around $7,000 or $8,000. $1,000. He promises to pay her $1,000 a day to help her on his business ventures. And she's still suspicious, but when she has thousands of dollars in an envelope and she's hard up for money, and she wants to know a little bit more about her dad. Where's her dad been all these years? Her interest is peaked. So she follows him on his journey. I forgot one of the places they go to. Do they go to the Abu Dhabi, Dubai? Do they go to Dubai first? Let's just say that there are so many parts around the world supposedly that are featured in Inheritance. Maybe several.
It's pretty much a travel log.
It is very good, Eric. It is Inheritance is a travel log because what happens is Maya. Something happens when she's at a lounge with her father over dinner, and he's talking about
that was the part I thought you were talking about when he said where they go to dinner or whatever.
oh, okay,
Where
right,
he
yeah,
gets up on the phone and leaves and then
okay,
calls her.
right. No, that was another dinner, but that was in fairness, that was a dinner that happens maybe 5 or 10 minutes later once they're
Yeah.
actually in the location. They're in the location. They have the dinner that Eric Holmes mentions, and he leaves the restaurant and he tells her, "Get out of." He tells her, "Maya, get out of the restaurant right now. Get out of the restaurant right now. There are cops coming." And she gets out of the restaurant and she doesn't know what's going on. And then she gets a phone call and saying that from her dad Sam, and Sam says that he has been kidnapped, and unless she actually goes through the motions and find some important information that he holds, okay, and she gives that piece of information to the people who are holding him hostage, he will be killed. So the rest of the narrative deals with Maya basically under the gun, trying to find that piece of information or that item that her father needs, getting that item, and then exchanging that item with the cutthroats, the criminals who have her father hostage. That is the premise of Inheritance. And it's interesting. I will say this. For a movie that's shot on the iPhone, I understand what Eric's saying about this. I was impressed by there's this one sequence that happens, I forget, I think was it in India, where it's a motorbike and a bunch of cars, and that,
Yes.
whoa. Seriously, folks, in my opinion, you can have your thoughts about whether this movie works or not, but you need to see this action sequence that happens in the middle of the movie. It's really cool. I'm gonna go right after Eric after he does his review if I think the rest of the movie works. But Eric Holmes, your overall review of Inheritance.
Yeah. At first the camera stuff was sort of frustrating, especially like they go over by the pyramids and everything. I'm like, oh, here's a part where you can have this like really cool shot, and it's just kind of like the camera's just kind of limp and just kind of it's not really capturing anything. It's just kind of there.
Yeah.
But then in other parts, like you mentioned with that chase, the the camera in front of them over the shoulder behind, like you can see what's going on behind them. It gives kind of like a claustrophobic feel, and then you see what's going on behind them, the person chasing them, and then it just kind of makes it like oh no, they're catching up on you, speed up, or whatever's going to happen. But then again, you don't know what's coming up front because you can't see it, and you just want the camera to turn around, and it's like, yeah, it's just real stressful in a good way. It's real stressful
I
to
want to
watch
watch
that.
that scene again. I want to watch that sequence again. That's how good it is.
Oh yeah,
I don't. Yeah.
yeah. So like early on when the camera was sort of frustrating me, later on it's kind of like I'm kind of I'm kind of digging this. Like it took me a while to get into the style, but once I did, it sort of worked for the movie. I'm trying to think of the Neil Burger movies I've seen. Saw The Illusionist.
Okay, there you go. Those are those big.
It was fine.
Yeah.
Limitless, don't
Limitless.
remember watching. Divergent, don't remember watching.
Mm.
So like his movies are anywhere from don't like it to forgettable. Not this one. No, this one's pretty dang good.
Well, Eric, how
And
about the suspense part? Sorry, the suspense part, the Hitchcockian stuff, the mystery. Okay, we mentioned the action stuff, which is good. Okay,
yeah,
but it's important that you like the other stuff.
I
Did
mean
that work for you?
that's pretty much the whole movie until like the last fifth of the movie. I would say
Sure,
that there's
sure.
this part where it turns less from suspense to now we're resolving plot at this point, and then it becomes something else entirely. But even that part, I like that part.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, yeah, this is like front to back, pretty solid. This has like so her dad is it. You can cut this out if you need to, but I mean he's a spy. You figure that out
Oh, right. Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
early on.
yeah. It's actually
Okay,
says that on the plot line, so it's good.
okay.
Yeah,
I,
you're good.
I I wasn't sure if that. I didn't think that was a spoiler, but I just
No.
tiptoeing around that. But so typically with spy movies, you get way too much plot and way too many it's fine to have a couple turns and twists here and there, but spy genre usually goes really heavy with that and gets way too much. And those can be fun to watch, but a lot of times I'll just kind of turn my brain off and go, "Oh, I don't know what's going on. I just know that person wants that thing and that person doesn't want them to have that thing, so I'll just roll with that. And then they explain more plot and it's just like, just washing over me. I don't care. This is a lot more tighter. It kind of there doesn't seem to be a lot of overdeveloped plot or intrigue with this one. It's just pretty simple cat and mouse, try to get my dad safe sort of thing.
Yeah, it just goes, right? There's not too much fat on this, right? It's good. I
mean, we talked about Steven Soderbergh. It was kind of like Haywire. It's just once the movie starts, it just goes. Or like Run Lola Run. It's just like once it starts, it just kind of goes.
Yeah, I agree with you. I really enjoyed Inheritance. I have not seen Bridgerton, okay? But Phoebe Dynevor is supposedly her acting career is taking off after Bridgerton and the aforementioned Fair Play. She's good as the lead in Inheritance. I really enjoyed this movie. It's in theaters January 24th. Eric Holmes, what is your rating on Inheritance?
Oh, this one's tough. Actually, it's not that tough. 4.5.
4.5 stars.
I think that they probably could have, and I know that it was the style they were going for, but if they could have taken more care with the cinematography earlier on, I think it probably would have been. This could have been 5, but I mean,
So
4.5. 4.5 is nothing to sneeze at.
Nothing to sneeze at. Eric Holmes, Greg Srisavasdi. I'm speaking to myself in my third person. In the third person, what did I give it? What's my rating for Inheritance? Which I thought was a very first-rate action thriller. Eric Holmes, what do you think?
4 stars.
4.5 stars for Inheritance.
Oh, okay.
Look, great action.
I used
solid
to be
story
great at this game.
Yes, and excellent performance by Phoebe Dynevor. We also have to mention Srisavasdi, who's very good in this movie. You guys might know him for his work in Notting Hill. In that, I think he played Spike, that scene-stealing guy Spike in Notting Hill. But really loved Inheritance. Again, 4.5 stars for me and Eric Holmes in theaters January 24th. We have a couple more films. We have a recommendation from Eric Holmes in a moment, but I just want to quickly say this. And I feel sort of bad for Eric Holmes because during our thread, Bruce Purkey was saying, hey, Greg, I think you're going to like this movie called Rose. But I don't know if I'm paraphrasing. I don't know if it's an Eric Holmes film. Well, Eric, I'm going to ask you if this is an Eric Holmes film. Okay, so the movie Rose centers on, yes, the titular character Rose, played by Francois Fabian. And she's 78. The movie starts off with a party for her husband. I think maybe is it a birthday party or something like that? It's not a spoiler, but within several minutes down in the runtime, her husband, longtime husband, loving husband, passes away. And the rest of the movie deals with how Rose is understandably grieving the loss of her husband, but her kids are also, she has a son who lives with her. She has another son who is the responsible member of the trio of kids she has. Her eldest son is a doctor, and then her middle child is a daughter, and that daughter has twins, and she's divorced. So each of these children, they have their own little lives to lead, and parts of Rose deals with their respective lives, or maybe a scene or two that deals with their children and their own lives. But really the heart of the matter, the heart of Rose, is Rose herself. And you get to see how she is trying to live her life at 78. She understands that she only has so much more years to live. She doesn't have a disease or she's not terminally ill, but she knows. She wants to live the rest of her life to the fullest. And she spent her life dedicating her life to the benefit and the well-being of her children. Unfortunately, her kids, being kids, they are very overprotective of their mother, and they want to rein her down. But as you can see from Rose, she does different things in this movie, which I'm not going to give too much away, but there is a very cute person in a lounge bar near her apartment. She lives in a apartment high-rise, and she usually was a hermit, but now she starts going out and frequenting that bar, which has a really good-looking 40-something proprietor, and who knows, she might become involved with him, but it's interesting. But she gets to know that person, and she actually gets to dip her toe in just the social life of her daughter as well. So there's some really interesting things that happen to Rose's life, which is due to the tragedy and the loss of her husband. She starts to open up and see her life in a different manner. It's directed by, and I'm sure I'm butchering the name, Aurélie Sada, and it opens in select theaters Friday, January 24th. opens nationwide January 31st. This movie also has a really cool, I don't know, cool, but a really insightful look at the lives of this family. They are Tunisian Jews, which I'm ignorant. I did not know any of their customs, but there's a lot of ethnicity and culture that is infused in Rose. And Francois Fabian as Rose is absolutely fantastic. The catch of this movie is it was it was made in 2021, so I'm sure it was released several years ago. And thankfully it's now playing stateside starting 3 years later, January 24th.
Yeah, release date December 8th, 2021 in France.
Which is in France. Okay, so is it France or France, Eric Holmes? I don't know. But France. Right. No, but it all kidding aside, this is a really well done movie. Beautiful, sublime performance by Francois Fabian, and the story itself is really well done. Eric Holmes is talking about not too much fat on a narrative. There's not too much fat on this narrative whatsoever. And by the end, where Rose is there's look in a movie. Usually, a lot of westerns deal with showdowns between the good guy, bad guy, good person, bad person. There's ultimately going to be some kind of showdown with Rose and the kids. The kids want her to stay home and just exist until she dies and keep. And then I understand that because they are worried about their mother, but their mother wants to live her life to the fullest. Okay, especially now that her husband has passed. So, Eric, does this seem like a movie that would not be for you? I have a feeling that maybe you could have.
I think
if you had the
Present
time.
seems more up my alley than this one.
Which one?
Present seems more up my alley than this
Okay,
one.
Presence. Okay, all right. Don't you care about the elderly and
Besides,
and living life, Eric
Greg,
Holmes? The benefit.
Greg,
You're more empathetic than me. What? Yes, Eric.
I only watch new movies. This one's old. It came out in 2021.
Gee,
May as well be in black and white and shot on film.
or shot on an iPhone. How very mean and exacting of you, Eric Holmes. We'll see one of these days. I don't know. I I would like to think you would love Rose. Wait till you hear Bruce Purkey's review. Again, I have not listened to the Cinem-Attic as of yet. I think he is really enthused and enjoyed Rose. Maybe towards the end of this year, and this might be one of the movies that Eric Holmes gets to pick up, because Bruce says Eric Holmes won't like Rose. I have a feeling Eric Holmes would have really enjoyed Rose. It opens in theaters again Friday, January 24th. Very memorable.
They play the Poison song in this?
No, they don't. They do not. That is an edit, Eric Holmes. Music stuff is our edits. But look, Rose, for me, I'm giving it 4.5 stars. Really enjoyed this movie. Great performances all around, especially the kids, even though they're not in it too much. I mean, you don't get to really delve into the lives there, but they're interspersed in the film. There's some really good moments in this movie, but again, highlighted by a great performance by Francois Fabian. And yeah, Rose. All right. That is it. Before we get out of here, we have one big recommendation, or maybe not a recommendation. Eric Holmes, can you give us the skinny on the movie Wolfman? What's about? Who's in it? All that stuff.
Wolfman. It's about Wolfman Jack, a radio DJ.
5 stars. Love it. Yeah. Love
All
it.
right, come check this out. It's a biopic directed by Lee Winnell. No,
I'd watch that actually.
Yeah, actually, so would I. Yeah. The funny thing is, the Wolfman, this movie doesn't look far off from Wolfman Jack, so that's kind of cool. No, this is basically a dad takes his son out hunting, and they're looking for this little deer, and they're chasing it down, and then they see something, don't quite know what it is. The dad seems to know exactly what it is, and so he grabs his son and brings him up in this like sort of perch thing. Or like this tower. They get up inside the tower, and you hear this. You hear kind of like grunts and growls and scratches. They, holds the gun up to the thing because like you hear you hear the sound kind of scratching its way up, and you see like this little puff of not smoke, but like when you breathe outside when it's cold, you see like a little puff of that, and then it gets quiet, and then the camera goes back to the dad. And then you see like the top of the perch behind him. You see like that little puff of mist come up behind him. It's like real creepy. That part was cool. But then everything.
The father's played by Christopher Abbott, and I guess is it the wife?
No. Christopher Abbott's the main character.
Okay.
The
Sam Yeager is the guy. Is it that?
Yeah, I think so. The dad's only in the opening scene.
Okay, got
So
it.
now we fast forward 30 years later, and the little kid's now the dad.
And that's Christopher
Um,
Abbott.
yeah,
Okay,
and
gotcha.
I think his dad is like missing or dead, or he's just out of the picture just in general. I can't remember why, but you start seeing him with his daughter. So early on, when you watch that thing, you get a little sense that the dad's kind of maybe a little more abusive than he should be. And then now you're 30 years later, you see some of that kind of slipping out with Christopher Abbott's character and his daughter. And so that's kind of what this movie is. It's not, kind of like how Invisible Man was about like what do you call it?
Turkey, the what?
The
Domestic
domestic
violence,
violence.
abuse. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly abuse with like within relationships. This is kind of doing that same thing. The Wolf Man is the cycle of abuse throughout a family. You grow up, your dad abuses you. You grow up, you're going to abuse your kids. They grow up, they're going to abuse their kids, so on and so forth. And that's kind of what the main theme of Wolfman is. And then you talk about like the Wolfman transformation. The entire movie is a transformation. I think that's kind of one of the hooks on this too. Like we're not going to have one scene where he's transforming into the Wolfman. He's going to be transforming into the Wolfman through most of the movie. And so I've heard people kind of compare it to The Fly, and I think that's kind of the pace you're going out with this.
So Julia Garner from Ozark plays his wife, right, Charlotte?
Yeah. So I'd say about halfway through the movie, they end up in a situation where the dad, Christopher Abbott, he's slowly turning into a wolf man as they're being chased down by another wolf man. And then you can figure out where that other wolf man came from and why he's changing, all that stuff. You'll find out, given what the theme of the movie is. I'm sure you probably figure it out pretty quick as I did. But overall, I thought this movie was really cool, really good. I think of Leo Whannell's movies, this might be my favorite of his.
Why?
Just
What?
because,
Really?
yeah, 'cause it has like similar, does the similar like themes that
Over Upgrade?
Invisible Man did. But this also this also had more visceral thrills to it. I think like the Wolfman action in this, especially like once Christopher Abbott goes like, he basically towards the end of the movie, he's pretty much full on Wolfman at this point, and then watching him and the other Wolfman like fight it out, like those parts are pretty awesome. I've seen a picture of the Wolfman, like a cheap costume of it, and it looked pretty janky, but in this, in the movie, I think it actually looks a lot better because it doesn't even really look like a wolf. It looks like just like a dirty, creepy monster man sort of thing. But either way, I love the look of it. I know the movie's kind of, getting mixed reviews or whatever. I fall on to the plus side of the mixed review on this one.
You like this movie better than Upgrade?
Yeah.
Oh,
But I mean, like, look, just saying, like, between this, Invisible Man, and Upgrade, they're all good movies. It's just,
sure.
and I think they're all like if I were to give them a star rating, they'd probably be all the same. It's just a matter of like which one barely edges out the other one.
Or which one are you more? Which one appeals to your sensibilities more? Maybe
Yeah,
also.
yeah.
Okay.
Like the worst Tarantino movie is still a 10 out of 10 movie. It just happens to be the one I like the least out of those.
So Eric, okay, so you are on the plus side. Rotten Tomatoes, the critics give it 52%. Audience members give it 57%. Do you understand that rating? What are they seeing? And how do you counter that? I mean, do you understand why it's low or do you not understand? I'm just wondering on that.
I think maybe they're expecting a Wolfman movie and not a family. They're not looking for a movie about the circle of violence, family violence, maybe.
That's
But
what you
I
were.
don't know.
That's how you approached it. That's how you
I don't know
approached
why
it,
you
right?
wouldn't
Okay.
be looking for that, because Leonel's previous movie, The Invisible Man, was exactly that. Like
Okay.
he took the monster movie and instilled something more personal in it. Did the same with this one. So I don't know how you would watch this and not pick up on that, or not look for that, or not go in for that, because that's what his previous one was. It'd be like if I went into a Michael Bay movie and there wasn't boom pow everywhere. It's like, what the hell are we doing here? I came to a Michael Bay movie to watch, pew pews, and there's none of that.
Eric Wolfman in theaters. Was it worth it for you, however much money you spent? Was it worth a time in the theater as
Oh yeah,
opposed to waiting? Okay.
yeah,
And it was good on the big screen, like the conflicts. You were talking Wolfman versus Wolfman.
yeah. I mean, it's a dark movie, so there's that. But you're in the dark room, so it makes it easier.
Underrated
I
maybe right now because of the rating, the low rating. You think the movie's underrated possibly?
I would say so, but again, like I don't know. I
Hmm.
don't know what people don't like about it. I just know that I think maybe they don't like the creature design.
Hmm.
I suppose that's the thing, but I don't know. I thought it was kind of creepy looking. I dug it.
So you dug it. Performances were good on point. You like the
Oh yeah,
performances?
yeah, yeah.
The
Uh,
visual design, the tension, all that stuff, all those ingredients. You liked all those ingredients.
yeah.
Suspense, the
It
production design
made a delicious soup. I'll
made a
slurp it up any day.
made a delicious Wolfman Jack soup for Eric Holmes.
All right.
Right.
This is Eric Holmes on Cinematics, and we're about to give Wolfman 4.5 stars.
Very good. 4.5 stars from Wolfman Jack Eric Holmes. Very good impression of the late Wolfman Jack. Props to him. Love him. 4.5 stars. Currently out in theaters. Eric Holmes, we're done. Anything
You know
else?
what? We
You want
probably
to say
should have
something?
talked about this at the top of the show, but David Lynch just passed away,
Mm,
and Bob Uecker passed away as well. For some
yes.
reason, every time I think of Norm Macdonald, I think of Bob Uecker because he always has funny Bob Uecker stories. But
Yeah. There's a
yeah, I'm sure plenty of people are going to mention David Lynch because he was definitely a big part just in the world of cinema in general. And it sucks that he hasn't. I mean, he's done stuff, but I
mm,
think Inland Empire was his last movie, and then he's done a bunch of shorts since then. And then, of
he
course, he
did
did the Twin Peaks, which
the
is
return. Yeah.
basically an 18-hour movie. So we got some. We got a lot from him, which we could add more. And there's not going to be anyone else like him. He's one of a kind. You say that about anyone that dies, but with him, I mean, come on, it's David Lynch.
It's David Lynch. Yeah.
But I wonder, and I hope, not that I want someone else to do David Lynch movies, but I hope that we can get someone else kind of like him, in the sense that someone that can pull a budget together for a movie and then just do something completely insane as he's been able to do.
Hmm.
I don't I don't know that that person exists right now. We'll
I
see
don't.
what
I
happens.
think there are potential people who exist, right? There's some potential for
Well, so
something
you know how you talk about like indie filmmakers would be like, oh, it'd be cool if they could get $100 million budget.
like
I don't
Mark
see
H.
David.
Rappaport from Hippo.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
But David Lynch, he wouldn't be able to get $100 million budget, but he'd be able to pull together like a good sized budget to make some weird movie.
Mm,
That would be great if Michael H. Rappaport could do that.
yeah, we love him.
Okay.
Again, we love
But
Hippo.
yeah, I just wanted to see another filmmaker actually more filmmakers for that matter, get to kind of where David Lynch was, where um, they have access to money to be able to just, let their subconscious go wild.
100%. I
And
100%
and
agree.
we don't have that now. We for sure have indie filmmakers that can do that, but not kind of at the level and stature as David Lynch was, to work, because they're still held back by, they're still constrained by, the funds they can raise or their means or whatever. But if they could also kind of step it up, not them step it up, but someone step up to say, "Hey, weirdo, here's a blank check. Go make your weird art film, and then they come back with maybe you love it, maybe you hate it, but either way, you're gonna watch and go, "What the hell was that? That was cool."
And I don't know if I can express this enough, but he seemed to be an artist who really, his movies are described as weird and surreal, but I don't think they were just weird or surreal just to be weird or surreal. I feel like he really loved what he was doing. You could see the passion, blood, sweat, and tears in his work. And like you said, the subconscious. I've never seen the subconscious portrayed just so immersively than a David Lynch film. It's just so great to watch. And it's funny, you watch, I think most of his movies, you're going to need to watch it twice, right? Twice to actually get, watching it once is a powerful experience, but watching it a second time gives you a lot more depth into his work.
Watch it 10, 20 times, that'd be even better.
Yeah, and I do not disagree with you. So
the weird thing about David Lynch though is like I remember watching The Elephant Man a bunch, and then Dune came out shortly after that, and when that was on HBO, I would watch Dune a lot. I didn't watch Eraserhead till like way later because it was like one of those movies you hear about, but I was never able to find, so I never saw it.
Sure.
But I do remember like that. The Blue Velvet was another one. Like these movies were pretty ubiquitous in my life growing up.
Yep.
And so
same here.
When people like go back and watch like Dune and go, "Oh, it's so weird," I'm like, I mean, that's 80s movie, right? That's
right.
It seems like, but then you watch it now with like new eyes, like, oh yeah, I guess that was kind of weird. But I there were just stuff I watched growing up, and then that was just what movies were to me. And then he'll be missed. When I watch his best movie, Inland Empire. That was the only movie I've seen where I kept losing the plot, losing the thread, and then coming back to it, like just snapping back to it, almost like I was in Laura Dern's character. She's like, was it like the movie that's like the story itself is cursed, so she starts shooting the scenes and then kind of slips away into this like nightmare, and then she'll be pulled back as soon as they say cut. That sort of thing.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And
that's
so,
very cool.
As I'm watching the movie, like when it slips off, when she starts slipping away, so do I, because I'm starting to get confused. And then as soon as they get back to it, I'm like, oh, okay. I know where. So I just keep going from like the confused and disorientated to like, oh yeah, we're watching a movie and I know exactly where we are. And just kept doing that. And I really enjoy that.
That's a tall order. That's a tall order because you're mentioning so many. The Elephant Man. You mentioned Dune. Yeah. You're mentioning. I mean, Twin Peaks. I think you should even count that. We're talking Wild at Heart, right? Blue Velvet, and you're putting in Inland Empire right at the top. The Straight Story right at the top. So
speaking of the Straight Story, I interviewed Kevin Farley years ago. Him and his brother, not Chris Farley, because this was shortly after Chris Farley died, but Kevin Farley and his brother are in the Straight Story. That went to Cannes right around the time that Chris Farley died. So then he was kind of describing that as sort of a bittersweet moment. It's like, him and his family, they all went to Cannes together. They're sad that, they're like, oh, this is cool. We're in a movie that made it to Cannes Film Festival. We're comedians. What the hell are we even doing here? And then they're pretty excited about that. And then on the other hand, they're like, kind of, boy, I wish Chris was here to be here with us. So it was kind of like a bittersweet moment.
Oh, that's cool. You got to interview them, huh?
Yeah. But it was I don't know, it was a David Lynch movie, but I thought it was a pretty good story. But
I said this,
dig that out at some point.
I said that the Cinem-Attic, you actually can't listen to it because you're not a Patreon member like Bruce is, but I talked about Inland Empire, and very quickly, David Lynch decided to hold the press junket to Inland Empire at a pie shop called Marie Callender's on the Miracle Mile District on Wilshire Boulevard. And that's the only time I've ever done a press junket at a pie shop. And that was very cool. That Marie Callender's is no longer here. It was a great part of LA history and just a lot of great memories from David Lynch.
Greg, the pie shop has delicious coffee. And you know what else it has?
What?
Magic Mind. Helps your mind. Good. for transcendental meditation.
Very
If you
good.
would like to try that.
Yes, that is an interesting mixture that you just put there, Eric Holmes. I'm gonna lead with that, or we're gonna end with that. And before we go, of course, thank you, Eric Holmes. Thank you, me. Thank you. Most importantly, CinemAddicts listeners, we got you. Tell us what you think of these movies, and tell us what you think of the Cinem-Attic, because Bruce Purkey will be up in a few moments. But before we get to Bruce, of course, here's Claire.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for joining CinemAddicts.
Welcome once again to the Cinem-Attic. The Cinem-Attic, the attic where I watch cinema. We call it the Cinem-Attic to make it sound a little fancier, but really it's just an attic. And I'm sitting up here in the cold, here in Alabama, where it's 8 degrees right now. 8 degrees. And I have it better than Mobile. I'm in North Alabama. If you're down on the coast of the Gulf of, what is it now? The Gulf of America? Apparently it's the Gulf of America now that's freezing over. Is it like when hell freezes over? I don't know. Oh, if anyone wants to, maybe let Trump know that there's a little place called New Mexico. He might want to rename that too. Is it going to be New America? Maybe Trumpistan? Okay, we're not going to get political here. We're going to move along. I've got 4 brand new movies to talk about. I'm sure at least some of them the guys have talked about, but I'm guessing some of them they have not talked about. We have Brave the Dark. We have Rose, which I'll talk about that in a minute. We've got The Colors Within, and we have Inheritance. As well as that, I'll have a little discussion of the documentary David Lynch, The Art Life, which I had never seen before, and obviously in the wake of the passing of David Lynch, everybody's talking about him, and I am not going to be an outlier on that front because I am also a huge David Lynch fan. It seems like everybody's a David Lynch fan now, but I was a David Lynch fan even before. But whatever. Everyone's trying to one up the other on who's the most Lynch fanian out there. But whatever. I'll jump into the pool with the other Lynch fans. All right. Let's get going on this. First up, we have Brave of the Dark, directed by Damian Harris, who is the brother of Jared Harris, who plays Stan in this movie. They are both the children of Richard Harris, famous actor who you might know from, what was it, A Man Called Horse, I think was one of the famous ones he did. He did a lot of stuff. Richard Harris. He was a very, very famous actor. Jared Harris, you've probably seen in quite a few things. If you don't recognize him by name, you probably would recognize him by face. I know he did a stint on Mad Men and a bunch of other things. He plays Mr. Dean in this. Also, the other main star, I guess the main actor in here is Nicholas Hamilton playing Nathan. This Brave the Dark. I was warned ahead of time. This is an Angel Movies? What are they called? Angel Studios production. Famously faith-based producers of films. So I was like, okay, I kind of braced myself. Who knows what kind of stuff we're going to get here. I would say out of the gate, I was pleasantly surprised that this is a very mildly religious oriented movie. It's much more of just a kind of a biopic of sorts. There's a little bit of a morality play thing going on here for sure. It's a period piece as well. And it honestly, if you have any complaint about this movie, is it's a little bit leaning into after school, special, which almost old enough to know what after school specials were. After school specials were these little usually hour long dramas that would be on in the afternoons that kids could watch, but they were supposed to be kind of morality plays. To be like some kid getting addicted to drugs, and then he would eventually find his way out of drug abuse, and then that would teach kids about drug abuse, things like that. So they were a little bit more serious and a little bit more adult, dramatic things for kids to hopefully deal or start to deal with some of the issues they may have in adult life. And this has that kind of feel to it, but it is not offensively pandering as far as the religious content. It's there if you want to see it, but it isn't beating you over the head. So that was refreshing. It's kind of like the band. It's like a band that is Christian but doesn't pretends not to be. You know, so like Jars of Clay was one I remember. Even U2 to some degree is kind of a big Christian band, but they can play themselves off as a secular band, but also kind of be a Christian band at the same time. That kind of thing. So the basic story here. This takes place. I'm gonna look it up. It was in 1986, and also at the beginning of this movie, it said this film has been approved by the Angel Guild. That made me more interested than what the Angel Guild is. Is that some kind of a committee or some kind of a cabal of very, very devout Christians who sit in a room and watch the movie and make sure it's acceptable? Must be something like that, right, guys? Anyway, it's supposed to take place in 1986. This is based on a true story. You do see at the very end some of the pictures of the real people involved. As I mentioned before, you got Nathan and you got Mr. Dean, Stan Dean. And the basic thing is you got this kid Nathan, and he's on the track team. He seems like he's a pretty good athlete. He seems like your kind of average middle America white dude, who's doing pretty well. He has a girlfriend. He's an athlete, but then on the side he's a bad boy. That's where it's kind of funny because it's like, he puts on his leather jacket at night and he goes out with his friends and he steals stuff and he sits in cars like muscle cars and does bad things and stuff. Anyway, he's a little bit of a troubled kid. And he ends up getting in trouble with the law over robbing some things or stealing some things from this business. And he is looking at possibility of doing some jail time. And that's kind of the setup of the movie. The other side of that setup is that Stan Dean is his teacher. And he's one of those teachers. He's mostly a drama teacher, but I think maybe he teaches something else as well. I don't remember if it was like math or something. Anyway, Mr. Dean seems to be, he is almost like the character in Dead Poet Society, right? He is one of those like inspiring teachers. He's kind of a bit of a nerd. He's kind of a little bit to himself. He's kind of a little bit out of the cool crowd of teachers, whatever that is. But he's liked by the students, and he seems well-intentioned, and he seems very genuine. And he sees the trouble that Nathan is in, takes Nathan under his wing, literally moves Nathan into his house. And it's kind of basically the basic story is you've got an adult who's willing to believe that there can be redemption and there can be a turnaround on this kid who's headed down the path of crime. And he has the faith in the kid, and he's willing to put his own reputation behind it to see if he can help this kid turn his life around. So as far as the basic concept of it, I mean, I guess it's admirable as a human being to do that kind of a thing. And it's good to see a faith-based movie, or any movie really, that's looking at, quote, criminals in a kind of a holistic light, in a light where they are a human being. You look at what the situation they're in and you try to figure out what has led them so far down this path. And is there something that can be done before they go all the way into an irredeemable actions? Because obviously there's a point where you can't turn back if you do some super heinous acts, no matter what your causes of your problems or causes of your, antisocial nature are, whatever those are. At some point you become the problem, and that's the kind of the lifelong, I guess, the age-old quandary when it comes to crime. So as far as all that goes, it's interesting. You definitely have two really likable characters. It's nice to see a character where you've got an older, dude teacher who's taking this younger guy under his wing, and there's no nefarious like things between them. He's not trying to take advantage of this kid. He really honestly wants this kid to do well. So all that's great. I mean, you could definitely get into the politics of like, how does this apply to like lots of different groups in the world? And would he care as much about a kid that maybe is a black kid who had gone into some crime, or a kid from, what if he's illegal alien that did this. There's a lot of political things that could really spin you on this movie. But the movie as it stands, in the time it stands, in the actual situation, assuming it is generally true to what happened at the time, is a pretty inoffensive, pretty well done little kind of a morality drama. I would give this a 3. I think it's definitely worth checking out, especially if this is kind of your thing and you are dipping your toe into Angel Studios. This is my guess, one of the less charged movies. It's really, like I said, it's almost more of a biopic. And like I said, you do see the people at the end that were the real people involved. And yeah, I was pretty engaged. I thought the actors were very likable, and that's kind of what you need in this. You need the kid to be likable. If anything, he seemed like, I don't know if this is the kid that's doing these things. He seems like he's just a Boy Scout that put on a leather jacket to be a bad boy, but yeah, whatever. It was fine. A few sappy moments, but not overly sappy. So I guess it was a mild surprise as far as being generally positive on this one. Okay, next up we got Rose. This is directed by Aurélie Sada. I think it's the best I can do with the names. And the main person you need to know, there's a whole bunch of people in here that are good. And I could go through the list of all the actors. Go to IMDb, you can look it up. Although, take a point, look for a Rose made in 2021, because apparently this has been shelved or maybe got a slight European release and hasn't made it to America till now. So if you look at, there's a lot of films named Rose. That's not helpful in finding the right one. So Aurélie Sada is the director, and then Rose is played by Françoise Fabienne. Françoise Fabienne now has, in the filming of this movie, looks like she has to be in maybe her 70s. And I kind of looked at her IMDb, and she's a pretty famous French actress by all accounts. I'm not a huge spring of knowledge of French actors and actresses and kind of their work. But I did see among her credits Belle de Jour. So she must have been a side character in Belle de Jour. And this basically takes it's kind of a French family drama, comedy drama. It takes, I'm going to see how to say this. So you have this Jewish family. It starts out at a wedding, and you find out very quickly. You're just kind of following around the party, like all these different people, and kind of meeting all these different characters. The children, there's a couple sons and a daughter of Rose and her husband. And you find out very quickly that Rose's husband, the dad of these kids, these all adult kids, by the way, at the wedding, they're all probably in their 40s and so on, 30s, 40s. And he has been diagnosed with cancer, and he's pretty far along. So you have this whole opening sequence. It's about 10 minutes or so, and kind of meeting everybody and getting the idea of kind of the characters and their different characteristics of the different people. And then that he is also not in good shape. So then your next scene cuts, and he has passed away. You don't know how much time has passed, but it feels like maybe a few months, not very long, probably. And you are at basically at was it the Shiva, I think it is, where you sit in mourning at the house, and they have the father's body in a room with candles, and it's covered, and people basically sit, and different family members show up and stay there for a certain period of time in mourning over the death. And that was like the first two scenes. You have this wedding and you have this death. And during all of that, you're meeting Rose a little bit, and she's just kind of, you can tell she's kind of reserved, and she's kind of the matriarch of the family, and she's obviously, sad and stuff during the Shiva, but she is, I hope I'm wrong about the Shiva, or not wrong about the Shiva. If I am, sorry if I'm using the wrong term there. Just to say mourning, the period of mourning. And during the period of mourning, she's sad, but she's also trying to make sure everything's done right and taking care of everybody and all that kind of stuff. And once again, just like the wedding, you're meeting the various children she has. She has a daughter who's undergone a divorce and seems to be kind of finding her way. She's got another son who's a doctor, and he seems to be the most devoutly religious in the Jewish faith. And he's really kind of making sure that all the stuff is done right, and the rabbi's showing up and all this kind of stuff. Definitely his own little world. And she has another son, and he is kind of the troubled son of the group. He's got some law issues coming up, a court case coming up, and he seems to be living with her currently, living with his parents. So he's kind of the son, the black sheep, the one that's, not really doing so well in his life, and they're kind of helping him out, it seems like. That's kind of the basic setup you get. And after those first two rounds, I was thinking to myself, like, oh, this is going to be kind of a, a well done, serious family drama. But after those first two acts, it takes a turn, and the turn is great. Basically, she is just kind of staying in her house, obviously depressed, obviously, post having this death of her husband after, I don't know if they said how many years, but I think a lot of years, 30 years, 40 years, they've been together their whole lives. And she looks to be adrift. Her kids are worried about her. She's not leaving the house. They're like complaining that she's not even taking care of herself and bathing herself. They're really concerned for her. And her daughter eventually comes over one day, and her daughter convinces her to get dressed up and go out to a dinner party with her, really just to try to get her mom out of her shell. And the whole time you're thinking, like the daughter, you're thinking like, boy, this is not going well for her. It's going to be a really dreary family drama. But at this party, there's like a spark for Rose. She meets another older lady there who's just kind of one of those people that just comes and holds court with her stories of her life and is just kind of crazy. And she's talking about being with younger men, and she's talking about, she starts, has a guy roll a joint for her at the party and pass it around. And it gets to Rose, or actually it gets to Rose's daughter. Rose's daughter passes it past her mom, thinking like, well, my mom's never going to do this. I don't want this is my mom. I'm not my mom smoking marijuana, that kind of a thing. And then Rose takes it and tries it and has a good time. And then she kind of starts coming out of her shell a little bit at the party, and she kind of starts telling stories a little bit. And you kind of see the mental wheels turning for Rose. And from that point forward, the movie basically becomes Rose kind of turning the corner on the morning. And instead of seeing it as like her life is over, her husband is dead, her kids are gone pretty much, she has no purpose in life, one of those kind of movies, it's kind of like you see her recognizing that she has been invisible and is kind of invisible, especially as an older woman in society. She's kind of invisible. And she's like, you could see she's kind of like, I need to figure out who I am now. Like maybe just throw caution to the wind and start living life. And why am I giving up? And that kind of becomes the rest of the movie. I really, is a joy. This movie is wonderful. It is not going to be a rollicking comedy. Like I said, it's more of a comedy drama, but she is done so well, the way she's portrayed, and you are so interested in what she's going to do and rooting for her. And it builds up interrelationships with just kind of passerbys and her children as the movie goes on. And those stories kind of come back around, and just watching her come out of her shell, it kind of becomes the point of the movie. And you really end up feeling like you're rooting for her and just wondering how this is going to play out for her. Is it going to crash and burn? Is she going to become a new person? Like, what's going to happen to her? And I just found myself really, really engaged with her, and really her performance is fantastic. I had mentioned to Greg offline that this feels to me like Woody Allen in his heyday was making these movies like Hannah and Her Sisters and all these kind of beloved, dramatic mostly, with a little bit of comedy, but mostly drama, like family, interrelated, like friends and family movies, where you just had super rich characters, you understood their motives, but really, as opposed to like a really plot-heavy movies, they were really just getting to know these characters and watching their kind of ups and downs and how they interacted with the world, and that's what made them fantastic. Of course, they had that kind of Woody Allen writing, which was way more kind of quirky and neurotic. But this feels kind of like in the same ballpark as those movies, which I think is a compliment. Say what you want about the man, but he was making great movies in those days. This movie really, if you kind of like that vibe of that era of Woody Allen, I think this movie might kind of scratch that itch. It's quite good. I'm surprised it was been shelved for so long. Probably because it's just hard to sell this. This is not a kind of movie that goes and does gangbuster money anywhere, and then you add on to that it's French. Who in America is going to be watching this other than the super art house crowd? But hopefully this will find an audience maybe as it comes into streaming. It's one of those movies that also just kind of unassuming, but unassumingly pretty great. I'm kind of going between 4 and 4.5. I'm gonna go 4.5. I think this movie is really, really, really good. And that's Rose. All right, next up is The Color Within, an anime movie. Um, and this is directed by Naoko Yamada. Naoko Yamada? Yes. You have I'm not going to go through all the actors' names that are playing the voice acting in this. I will ruin them. I will just give you the main characters. Your main character is Higurashi. She's also go by Totsuko is her first name, but so they'll say Totsu or whatever. They'll shorten it for her a lot of times. And then you have Rui, who is this boy that they meet later, and then you have Kimi, who is another girl that's with her in the school. So Tatsu is your main character, and Tatsu is like it's like a religious Catholic girls' school in Japan, and she right out the gate you have some voiceover from her, and she's talking about how she sees the world in colors. I forget what the term is. Is it synesthesia? I could be wrong. I think there's this thing where you like hear sounds as color, or you somehow you like describe things as color. I think it's kind of a version of that. So you kind of see some depictions of that where in the animation, like maybe she'll be looking at a person. I think there's this one teacher, this younger nun teacher at the school, and that she really connects with. And when she sees her, she kind of everything fades away, and you see the teacher as orange colored, you know. And early on, she sees Kimi as this blue, the shade of blue. She kind of has this emotional, like, color response to Kimi. And very quickly after that, Kimi basically has to drop out of school. Kimi is kind of troubled and she disappears. And Kimi kind of becomes this, weird legendary status at the school where it's like, what did she do? Where'd she go? Something terrible thing happened, but she's not at school anymore. And the fact that she's not there is kind of a little bit of a scuttlebutt at the school. And for whatever reason, because Tatsu saw her like colors and whatever, she's kind of obsessed with finding her and figuring out where she went. All she knows is that she being Kimi, all she knows is that Kimi is left school and now is working at a bookstore. And suppose that's kind of scandalous, I guess, like that she's not in high school anymore, essentially, and that she just had to give up and go work. So Tatsu goes looking for her, basically going to every bookstore around the area, and eventually just stumbles upon this one. It's called, like, I forgot to write it down, a White Cat Hall bookstore. It's like down an alley, and of course it's almost like magical, right? Tatsu's walking around down the street. She'd pretty much given up on finding Kimi, and this little cat meets up with her, and of course she's drawn to the cat, and she follows the cat, and the cat leads her to this bookstore, and inside the bookstore is Kimi, and Kimi is sitting there playing around with her guitar, practicing guitar, because it's a very, very quiet little bookstore in like a house, like not even a big bookstore, it's like no one's there. It's just kind of like people very rarely wander in. So while Tatsu's there looking around the books, a dude shows up. He seems like he maybe is interested in Kimi, and Tatsu kind of jumps in between and very, very awkwardly basically blurts out that, oh, her and Kimi are in a band together. And he's like, oh, great, And essentially, through this kind of meet awkward, the three of them end up falling into supposedly being in a band together. And Tatsu doesn't know how to play anything in the band. Kimi has just been messing around with guitar, doesn't really know how to play it. And this other kid they met, this dude, who seems unassuming, not like a player at all, like unassuming dude. He, he seems like he maybe knows a little bit about keyboards and musicianship, but he's pretty awkward in his own right. And that's it. This is a very gentle, gentle movie about kind of overcoming these small, like, impediments to keep you from going forward, especially like late teen years when you're like, whatever it is that it's your reservedness from one way or another. Like maybe you're ashamed of your family, or maybe you just don't believe in yourself, or you don't have that daringness to just go with what you really want. Like, so for example, the boy's family is like a long line of doctors. So it's expected he's going to go into medical school, and he's planning on going to medical school, but he is obsessed and in love with music, and has been, messing around with trying to learn how to play different instruments, and he's always had this obsession with music. And the fact that he can't really, pursue that is a big impediment kind of on his own feelings of freedom and stuff. And each of them has some version of that. Oh, and of course, when she first meets the boy, he has a color too. So there's this whole thing of like, she's almost will get into a mesmerized state seeing the two of them. And you think at first it's like, well, this is going to be like a triangle. Like she's going to be in love with the boy, and so is Kimmy. And who's going to get the boy? And is it going to be and it never plays out like that. It never even gets very romantic at all, which is interesting and refreshing. It's literally these three kids are friends, and it never even comes into play like, well, is maybe the dude is gay. No, maybe. It doesn't really matter in this movie. It's like they are just they are bound by their kind of different versions of awkwardness with the world, and they kind of find themselves united by this kind of love of exploring the music together, and just kind of that's the one place that they're free of whatever their little impediments in life are. And it's just, and you probably get the feeling from this. Like I said, it's a very gentle movie. The plot is very simple. It's like the three of them are in a band. Are they going to be able to stay in a band? And are they going to eventually perform? And are they going to eventually be able to tell their parents? And is it going to be accepted? And will they play a show at the end? It's that kind of a thing, right? But really, the journey to get there is what the movie's about, which is just the way they are slowly navigating, like, I guess, how to get out of their own traps in life and be able to interact with the world and each other and just kind of become themselves, like coming of age in a lot of ways, And there's some really like great moments. There's just a moment where all the kids go on a field trip, and Tatsu stays behind pretending to be sick. So Kimmy, who's not in school anymore, can break in and just have a slumber party with her. And once again, it could have been romantic, and it just never, it's not about that. It's about them just having this great time together, and it has no problem just sitting with that. Same thing with the music they create. They aren't creating anything that's crazy and fantastic. It doesn't become like, oh my gosh, they're the best musicians in the world. It's just like you're just seeing the joy of them creating together and how they kind of are freed when they do it. A really fun movie for me. I really liked it. And I like the fact that as an anime, it was more a super grounded version of anime, and there are some of those out there, but a lot of them tend to get really big and have huge stakes and very fantastical elements. And I love those a lot of times as well. But sometimes you get movies like this that are just very, very quiet, and they're very fantastic. I can't remember the name of it. There's the one about we saw a few years back about a woman who just was learning how to cook and living in the country. And it was just like this kind of a thing where you just had this very quiet character moments. And it was the kind of movie that usually doesn't get made as animation, right? It just gets made as a live action, like, late teen coming of age drama with slight comedic elements. But this is made as anime. So it just makes it a little more interesting that way. And then all the color stuff, of course, is part of it as well. The animation itself is pretty good. Once again, it isn't anything that just blows you away because it's not overly stylized. It's just the form that you're being presented as. I will go 4 stars on this. I did have quite a good time with it. I think it's going to be way too quiet and way too subdued for some people, definitely. You can probably tell from my description kind of if it's the movie for you or not. But I had quite a good time with this. The colors within. And then last, I had the movie Inheritance, directed by Neil Berger, starring Phoebe Dynevor as Maya. And oh my gosh, I forgot to write his name down. It's the it's the dude from Notting Hill that was the roommate. I want to say Reese Ifans, but I might have the name wrong. So I'm sorry, guys, if I did. And he plays her father. This movie is funny because I was talking a little bit with Greg offline about this, and he was like, "Didn't you see this was totally shot on an iPhone?" And while I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, this looks like it was totally shot on an iPhone. And then I looked it up and like, yep, it's totally shot on an iPhone. So some movies are supposed to be, are amazing and surprising that they were totally shot on an iPhone. This one's not that amazing and surprising to me that it was totally shot on an iPhone. It looks visually like it was shot on an iPhone. Now, is it a relatively technically impressive movie to be shot on an iPhone as far as the amount of stuff they're doing with the iPhone? Sure, but I don't think it looks like it wasn't shot on an iPhone. I think it's respectable, but I don't think the cinematic look of it is not as rich as a non-iPhone shot movie tends to be. So we'll kind of get that technical piece out of the way. Once again, I think Phoebe Dynevor or Dynevor, I don't know if I'm saying her name right. I think I looked it up and I think she's in what's the show she's in? She's in some I can't really name it. It's a really famous British show that's very popular right now. I think she's in that. So I think a lot of people might know her by face. I didn't know who she was. Anyway, it starts out with her and her mother has just died. There are a lot of movies where these people just died, like a parent just died and then something goes on. Her mother's just died, and you see this kind of quick montage of her, you don't know at the time, but it's basically like the day or so after her mother died, and you see her out just getting a giant bottle of booze and getting really drunk and going to a club and meeting a dude and not caring about him and just getting him out of there one night standing. And then you see her sitting on the ledge of her apartment, and then you see that there's a hospital bed in her apartment. And that's kind of the first indicator, like, oh, she's been caretaking her mom for quite a while, as her mom was probably, with cancer or something, terrible, chronic, life-ending condition of some sort. And at first I'm thinking, like, is she suicidal? She's sitting on the edge of this thing, but I think she's just depressed and she's just not dealing with life. And it's kind of like, where do I go now? Kind of a thing. And then you have a quick sequence with the funeral and the family members there, and then out of nowhere, her deadbeat dad, shows up, and that's the character I just said from Notting Hill guy. And sorry if I got his name wrong. I might have, and I'm not going to stop to look it up while I'm doing this. Bad reviewer I am, whatever. You get the feeling he's not been a good dad. He's never been around. He's always traveling. Oh, she's like, oh, where are you coming from now? And he says some far-flung place. And before he's about to leave, he's like, hey, what are you going to do now? And you should work for me. I do these big real estate deals, and I'll have like big giant investors come in, and essentially you could show them around. So for example, if I have this, Chinese real estate investor, and he wants to buy this hotel, or you can come and show him around the city, give him an idea of what's going on, and help get them to, make this giant deal. So he's kind of saying he does these big deals, and she's kind of all skeptical out of the front because, like, he's never been there, and he's always kind of running. It's kind of like just there's always something with him that's just not right, and you get that feeling. And she's like, yeah, whatever, Dad. And he's like, no, what are you going to do now? You need money. You need a job. I need someone to help me do this. And she's even kind of like, are you getting me to escort these guys? What are you doing? He's like, no, 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 no. It's not like that. You're just showing them the city from wherever I'm trying to sell. You're giving them, you're a cool person. You're going to be a cool representative for me. It's much better than having some, stuffy dude. And hey, I can help you, get your leg up now and keep your finances going, and maybe get you situated in something you never thought of before, and we can kind of reconnect and all that kind of. So basically, he's selling it to her, right? She's still a little bit suspicious of this whole thing, and then he's like, "Look, I got a deal coming up. You can do this with me and see how it works out. Come with me. I'm going to be flying to Egypt." And she's hesitant, but she's like, what the heck am I going to do anyway? Let's go for it. Worst case scenario, he's like the bum he's always been, and I'll just fly back. And her friends and everybody are telling her, don't do this. This is terrible. But she goes with it. And while they're on the plane, he gives her an envelope of a bunch of money, like as a kind of a down payment to show her that he's for real about this. Gives her like an envelope of, I forget how much, like, say $10,000 in cash or $1,000 in cash. A lot of cash. He gives her a bunch of cash on the plane. He's like, look, this is real. And then it's kind of funny. We just saw Night Call like a week or two ago. And there was this whole setup where it's like they went into a place, and, he goes into a place, and then the lady leaves, and she calls him and said, get out of there now. This has almost the same sort of a scene where basically they get there, she meets his business partner. They go to a restaurant, they're talking over what they're going to do and how she's going to meet these clients and so on and so forth. He gets up for a minute at the restaurant and goes out to do something. While she's sitting there in the restaurant, he calls her and says, "Get out of the restaurant now." As she's leaving the restaurant, all these Egyptian police are pulling up, and they're looking for him, and she's just scuttling down the alleyways of Egypt, Cairo. She doesn't know where she is, what's going on, and so begins the adventure, right? And it just goes down and down and down a rabbit hole where essentially this becomes kind of like a spy espionage thriller sort of a movie where her dad is, she even questioned it on the plane, her dad is obviously messed up with some shady people, and maybe the people he's been messing with are laundering their money and using these real estate deals to do some, maybe they're arms dealers on the side, or maybe they're working for, you know, governments that are not friendly to America or whatever, and they're buying real estate and using that to push their money through, and that's how he's making this money. And now he's in trouble with some of those people, and she is having to try to untangle the mess that he's made. That's the setup. This becomes kind of a globe-trotting movie. Obviously, it becomes a thriller of sorts where she is trying to outrun various people that are trying to get him, at the same time trying to extricate him from the mess that he's gotten himself into. And how does it work as a thriller? I think it's okay as a thriller. I felt like I should have been much more thrilled throughout than I was. And I don't think it's the filming. I don't think it's the iPhone stuff. There's just something about the basic setup that I felt like it was more impressed with its locations than it was with getting me a story that really intrigued me. Because there's a couple turns the movie takes, and I'll leave it at that. There's definitely one turn, a big turn that the movie takes that didn't surprise me at all, and I didn't think it should surprise the character at all either. The main character of Maya, Phoebe, played by Phoebe. So I think that there was like the element of, I guess, suspense and of danger just didn't quite work for me too much in this movie. And I think that's a big thing, because I think this movie should be like very thrilling, and you should be just on the edge of your seat the whole time. And most of the time I was just like, oh, this looks like a lot of stolen footage to me. And I was kind of impressed by that aspect of it, as like, oh, they're shooting on iPhones that are able to shoot all of these elaborate scenes. It looks like just in the middle of the streets with just a whole bunch of non-paid non-actors in this movie, like they're shooting it in the real streets and the real time, and just like I said, doing stolen footage. I'm guessing a lot of this was stolen footage, not all of it obviously, because there's actors on the other side as well, but it seems like a good chunk of the people that they are interacting with are just people on the streets of Cairo, people on the streets of Mumbai and South Korea. There you go, you got all the locations. South Korea. So I think a lot of it was an excuse to be able to do that sort of a thing. So I guess technically that's kind of impressive, but it's one of those things where it becomes a little bit of a gimmick, and it's like, if it's impressive, then you need the story to actually be impressive too. Otherwise, it's just kind of a travelogue. And unfortunately, I would say to me, it became more of a travelogue than it became a movie. So as a travelogue, it's pretty good. There was one kind of impressive set piece, which was like a chase through India. I think it was, I don't know if they were in Mumbai at that point or not, but she jumps on the back of a taxi like a motorcycle, and the motorcycle driver is driving her just through the crowded streets of India while she's being chased through those streets. And that was really, really well executed. And the way the camera was like right in their faces as you could see they were actually on an actual motorcycle, not being dragged, I don't think, by a truck or anything. I think they were actually rolling through the streets, and there must have been another motorcycle right next to them with the camera, kind of like in Athena, but much less impressive and much less like spectacular than Athena, but pretty good. That little chase sequence in this movie was pretty great. If the whole movie had a little more of that, it would have almost had that kind of Bourne Identity like energy, and that sequence kind of did, but the rest of the movie didn't quite live up to that. And then there's a final twist that I thought was like, yeah, okay, that's fine. I might do a quick spoiler on this because I know that Greg wants to do spoilers a little bit every week. So maybe at the end I'll do a quick spoiler for you guys. Anyway, I thought it was okay. I guess I'm torn whether to give it a 2.5 or a 3. I'll give it a 3. I think it's good enough to recommend. And I think depending on how much you kind of buy into the the story of it, your mileage may vary on this. I think some people are gonna really like the actual story, and it's gonna actually really be a in your face, like really realistic action thriller because they're just right there with that camera style. And then she is, no matter what, she is very I don't want to say believable character. I mean, she is, but I would say she's a, you root for her. She's good. I don't think she blows you away, but she's good. She's a good main character to have. So I will give that 3 stars. Last but not least, but right after, I don't know right after, but after we recorded our shows last week, David Lynch died. And that hit a lot of people like a ton of bricks. And I was one of those as well. Big surprise. Everyone's been kind of on the same boat. But in the film community, I don't think anything struck people quite as hard as David Lynch's passing in a long time. Which is saying something because, when an actor, a director dies, we all have like, oh my gosh, this kind of emotional impact because they have made these great movies that have affected you. But there's something different about David Lynch that's just really under people's skins. At least myself. I speak for myself. Like 5 days later now, 6 days later, I'm still just obsessed with David Lynch stuff and thinking about David Lynch and looking at the stuff I have by David Lynch. I have my DVD of Mulholland Drive. I got my Eraserhead Blu-ray that I bought like a year ago or so. I've got my painting of the baby from Eraserhead up on the behind me, if you can see it, probably kind of vaguely right there, blurry, but like all of my stuff is blurry. I have a terrible webcam, whatever. Focus. There it is, right there. What else about David Lynch? So anyway, my quick recollections of David Lynch, why he mattered to me, and then I did watch, because they had it free from Criterion, and you could also get it on HBO Max, the documentary from 2016, David Lynch, The Art Life, directed by Rick Barnes, Olivia Nergard Helm, and John Wynn. So once again, I watched that just kind of as a way to kind of get back into that David Lynch world. But real quick, like, what are my connections to David Lynch? Everyone has their stories. For me, I saw The Elephant Man really early. I think the first movie I watched where I knew it was him. So Elephant Man I watched and I liked it, but to me at the time it was like an serious Oscar movie. It was good. I didn't really key off of the weirdness. There is some weirdness in there, but not knowing Lynch's style, it didn't really catch me necessarily. I did know of Eraserhead, but I had never seen it. It was a midnight movie at that point. So we're talking like early 80s probably when I became basically aware of David Lynch. But it wasn't until Blue Velvet that I really keyed into his thing. And for a lot of people, there's that movie, that was entry movie for David Lynch. For me, it was Blue Velvet. I remember very clearly a couple things. One is, I remember Siskel and Ebert hating it and being really angered by it, especially by Isabella Rossellini. They felt she was kind of abused as an actor. And there's this famous scene where she is naked and bruised on the front lawn of a character as this, normal like suburban neighborhood, and they felt it was kind of like exploiting her. And really, I think they probably also have this thing because, her being the daughter of this, famous Hollywood icon actor, it just felt kind of dirty and stuff. And I think that's kind of the point, but they didn't, whatever. And they just didn't like the movie. And I was really drawn to like, what is this movie that everyone's talking about and loving or hating? Is this kind of, it was a real touch point at the time. What year was that? 85, I think, maybe. I had to go back and look. And of course, when it came out in video, I went and saw it. I didn't see it in the theater. The first Lynch I saw in the theater was Wild at Heart. And then after that, I saw all of his movies in the theater. But Blue Velvet hit me when I saw it as this weird, but emotional, and just the way all of his stuff works, right? It kind of hits you in that dream logic level, and it works. You don't quite get the narrative a lot of times, or it takes you a while to unravel what you think the narrative is, but it it is something, and it's getting to you, and it's getting to your psyche in a way, and worming into your brain in a way that some movies will not do. A lot of movies will not do. I always think of him, and it's funny because he's a painter, right? I always think of him like Picasso, and I did very early think of him like Picasso, and that is Picasso's whole thing was he could do all this representative art. His blue period and all that stuff is very traditional versions of depicting people and scenes in art. And then he proved he could do that, and he could do it very well. And then he did all of the stuff we think of as Picasso, the double faces and the sideways and the, like, what the heck? People complaining like, oh my gosh, what is this? Anyone could do this, but also he became renowned and groundbreaking for the way he twisted and changed art. And David Lynch, I think, of the same way. He's done those things like The Elephant Man and The Straight Story to prove to people like, I can do traditional movies if you want it. Another big one that you think about all the time in Mulholland Drive, you're like, what is up with this weird like style of acting and this very forced and fake kind of version of, he's terrible at directing actors, And then there's this audition scene in the middle of the movie, which just shows where, your main character, played by Naomi Watts, just does this incredible audition and just acts her brains out in front of you. And you're like, oh, he knows how to direct actors. All that stuff he was doing before is on purpose. All of the stuff he does is on purpose. You may not like it, but he's doing it on purpose. He knows what he's doing. He's not just throwing weirdness at the wall. And in fact, a lot of his movies, whether you agree with interpretations or not, a lot of his movies are very understandable and very straightforward. It's just they are told in highly symbolic, dream logic ways, and you have to either go with that flow and let it sink into you, or you don't, and it just annoys you. I am of the first category, which is not annoyed. I really, really like it, and I sink into it. Even the stuff that didn't quite work for me the first time ends up coming around for me. I don't think there's anything of his that I hate, and most of it I quite love. And I think that a lot of it is going to stand the test of time. Well, it has stood the test of time. I think it will. So that's kind of my diatribe on David Lynch. I love David Lynch. Oh, what else do I have? Oh, I have the Laura Palmer wrapped in plastic Funko Pop that I got at the Funko Pop headquarters in Washington State. I also have a picture of myself in front of Laura Palmer's house, which was like 10 minutes from where I lived in Washington State for quite a while, up near Everett, Washington. So I had a lot of connections to Twin Peaks. And that's the other thing. People talk about his legacy. His legacy on TV, I think people are now going back and reassessing. It's like the fact that he was literally the first person to basically make legacy TV before he knew he was making it. He just did it. He made something that was very cinematic for TV, that made no sense, that broke all the weird rules of TV and just didn't work as TV. But now you looking back at it, you can say like, if Twin Peaks hadn't existed and hadn't been this oddball, unexpected success, you wouldn't have, Sopranos and all this other stuff occurring maybe in the same timeline or happening as quickly. He kind of broke a big barrier there. He also, I feel like, you think of Tarantino as kind of rehabilitating and taking actors that are either kind of has-beens or finding oddball actors and just really giving these breakout roles. I think of David Lynch as doing that a lot. I think David Lynch really had a way with actors, and I think he's underestimated as an actor's director. But he would do these kind of really strange castings and just bring out the best in them, make these hugely memorable performances before you were having Tarantino do it. Look at Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper was just about a has-been, and he made his most iconic roles with David Lynch. And you have a few other character or actors like that. There's a great tribute that was a few days ago by Naomi Watts talking about how she was just floundering as a young actress and pretty much invisible to the world, and how he essentially just pushed her into the spotlight in a really great and supportive way. So once again, the legacy of David Lynch, I think, is just going to grow stronger. He is truly iconic, and cannot be underestimated. Once again, I won't say too much about the actual documentary, The Art Life, other than to say this is a great supplement. So if you are not a David Lynch fan, David Lynch, Art Life will be absolutely horrendous for you because it's just David Lynch, mostly David Lynch telling stories from his life, basically from his early life. So from his life as a child up to basically the production of Eraserhead. He's talking about those portions of his life. I wish there was a part 2 and part 3 of this. I suppose there never will be unless he made a bunch of recordings we don't know about. And in David Lynch fashion, he just talks about events that he remembers, almost like dreams, like you'd say, just little events from his life. And it helps you if you are a fan, which I am, of course. If you are a fan, it's a wonderful supplement. If you're in middle of the road, it might also be kind of just boring to you. If you're a fan, it'll give you some aha moments. So it's that moment from Blue Velvet I just described. Early on in The Art Life, he's describing when he was a little boy living in Spokane, Washington. And he talks about how his whole world was just like from his house to like a block away, there's this little store. And then another block away, there was, I forget what he said, like a little playground or something. But essentially his whole life was these 2 blocks. And I think his age at that point must have been like 7 or 8 or something. And he talks about one day, like I think he said around dusk, around dinner time, he was out in his front yard playing, doing whatever, because he loves to play in the mud and do things. And this woman just was walking, looks like she was walking dazed down their suburban neighborhood, fully nude and bloodied. And I thought, and obviously, if you're a David Lynch fan, you're like, oh my gosh, that's that scene from Blue Velvet. If you're not, you're like, why did he tell that story? Was he traumatized by it? Well, he was traumatized by it, but he was also confused by it because he doesn't remember much about it. He doesn't remember what happened to her. He just remembers that vivid experience and that vivid image. And that encapsulates him, right? He has taken these moments from his life, like we all do, taken this moment from his life, internalized it as this fragmented memory that may not even be exactly accurate. But now that's what he has as the memory of that moment. And unlike a lot of artists, he doesn't just ignore it, or he doesn't like totally embellish it into a very clear and clean symbolic story. He holds that image and he literally drops it into one of his movies and just lets it act the same way to us, So that is kind of the key, I think, to what he does. And watching this movie, as he essentially is just working on different artworks. He's been a painter, sculptor his whole life. In fact, it's kind of his main identity. One that really likes to build and create things with his hands. He has like a workshop. His painting style is very tactile. And you're watching him just do that and tell these stories. And all you're doing, at least if you're like me watching it, as a Lynch fan, I'm guessing others have the same reaction. As you're watching him tell these stories and listening to him tell these stories, you're getting these aha moments throughout, like, oh, that's where the weird neighborhood in Eraserhead came from. Oh, okay. Well, that's why this happened in that movie, And you're kind of getting a feel for like, he's giving you just a glimpse of this whole internal symbolic dream nightmare logic that is there because he has these things that repeat over and over and over again in his movies, and you always know they have a meaning. And you always know they have a meaning within the movie, but they have a meaning kind of just to him in general because he's so obsessive about always doing these things. And you get an idea about where a few of these things come from, just a few. Like I said, I gave you one really concrete one, but there's a lot of little things like that in this movie. And I think as that goes, it's really helpful. And then it's just also kind of meditative because you're just watching his process. You're just watching him, smear mud and weirdness on this, on a canvas, or you're watching him slowly bend a piece of wire while he's enveloped in smoke. He died from emphysema. And that's probably because he smoked his whole life. But you find out, why did he smoke his whole life? There's a reason he smoked his whole life, because it's part of what he's created his own like persona. He's created his own mythology, but he also kind of believed in it. It gave him comfort. So weirdly, he probably would have been, might have lived another 15 years longer, but he probably would have been absolutely miserable if he wasn't smoking. So for him, it was the right choice. Weirdly, weird enough to say it was the right choice. All right. That's everything I have for this week. If you're hanging around, I'll do a quick spoiler for Inheritance, because we're trying to do that a little more often. But otherwise, if you're at the end of the episode now, thanks again for listening in. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments or whatever, let us know. You can message us on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook. You can email me at my name if you really want to. I don't think anyone has, but hey, I don't care. Anyway, I'd love to hear from you and see what we can do and how we're doing. And Patreon's coming up next week. That's Goonies and what's the other movie? I've already forgotten. Goonies and something else. Oh, Goonies and Commando. So it's a very 80s, very, very 80s Patreon coming up next week. All right, I'm heading out other than the spoiler talk, which you might be listening to if you're a Patreon.